Hello, I hope you all are doing so well. I know it's a very challenging time right now. There have been some themes that have been arising over the last several weeks for sure, but I feel like we've kind of been building up to this over the last 2 months or so. But I want to start by saying that over the weekend, we were hit with something quite massive. The way I would describe it is that I wouldn't say it's like unlocking something in the DNA. To me, it feels more like a structure within the DNA. This sort of containment has been released. And it does conjure images of slavery and control. But what are the implications of that? Part of what's happening is that we are used to living within an atmosphere, really, of constraint. Now, I know we know about control systems, right? We know there is foreign energy here that has created these slavery concepts, which we have then built upon as a result of mind control. But also control we can experience in a very atmospheric way. And what I mean by that is if you think about growing up in your family of origin and the way that that community, that grouping of souls, those energy bodies, right, think in a certain way, move in a certain way, interact in a very specific way, right? That constellation of experience that you have, and you're deeply immersed in that. And the early years of your life, the most important formative years of your life, it becomes a sensation and a way of feeling and being that you don't even realize is there, right? That's that conditioning and that programming. But it's so much deeper. It's really in our cellular bodies. So where this is also then within the genetics, within the DNA, not just from our, so we have many layers of this kind of control, atmospheric control, right? Limited ways of thinking and perceiving a larger reality, let's say. We have it from our family system, we have it from the societal system, we have it from, right, those collective thoughts, maybe worldviews, whatever it might be. So many different ways, you know. The energy's getting distracted here. And this is what I was feeling earlier. Okay, so let me finish that though. So what's happening is that, oh, see, this is insistent. This is the piece we need to talk about. It's in the feminine sacral, where we are, it keeps targeting here. It's in the sacral, but it's in the brain as well. So, or the brainstem, let's say, all this connectivity back here between the human, between the energy field, our interfacing with the outer world. So this constraint, this control, this structure, these frameworks, they're being released. And what happens when we are so used to these boundaries that we don't even realize they are boundaries, right? It's kind of like if you have a cast on for a long time, right? You learn to move, you learn to manipulate in a certain way, to navigate so that you're not bumping the cast, or you have to put in a certain position, right? Suddenly you have the cast taken off and you really don't become aware of how much you have adjusted to the cast until you no longer have that cast on. And then suddenly it's this awkward feeling of, oh, now I can move in a different way. Is it safe to move in this different way now? Because I've been limiting my mobility, I've been limiting my activity so as to compensate this cast. Once it's taken off, it's kind of like, now what, right? And that's the experience we're having in this moment. What we don't realize, there's been this complete obliteration in the cellular body. So where it might feel like things are re-arising that you have dealt with over and over. You might even feel like you're all the way back at what could feel like your spiritual awakening when you started to become aware that there was, hold on a second, something is wrong here. I really need to change. Like, let me take an honest look at my life. Like, I'm really not happy. Things are not working. It's just, I thought, I was doing the best I could. And then it's just, if I look at it, it's just created more of the same, right? Even though in my mind, I thought I was trying to approach it differently or change my life or whatever it might be. So as we experience an atmosphere within us now where these constraints have been obliterated, it's creating a sense of agitation, of urgency, of maybe even anxiety, because what we're feeling is the unlimitedness that we've theorized about, that we've talked about, that we know about at a mental level is supposed to be possible, but we've never actually been immersed fully within it. So, what we are also experiencing as a result of this, now these things go hand in hand though too, right? This repression, and I'll just speak to it in these terms, I still haven't figured out a better way. It's just we've been using these references for so long. The repression of the masculine energy is coming up big time right now. We tend to experience it as oppression of the voices of change, of different ideas, of a different way of being. What I'm discovering through the work I'm doing is that everything is a bit inverted in how we are trying to understand this. Because what it is showing is that actually masculine energy, this interfacing of us with the external reality, is constantly exchanging information, right? We're constantly taking in and letting go of things through our human vessel simply by being here, right? We have to interface with this external reality. What we need to do then is to take that in, to communicate it, right? Merge it, maybe not merge it, but to compare it, have a conversation about it with our feminine range. And our feminine range is really, to me, it's the basis of who we are as a soul. It's our blueprint. It's the part of us that is eternal, the integral part of us that is eternal. Yeah, I feel that in the sacral. But neither one of these is necessarily the ultimate point, right? There's more. Like, these things need to have a conversation here. And then the core, or the integration, or the union, is that you look at, what does this information mean when I weave it with what I already know? And do I arrive at a new belief, a new position, a new understanding that I would like to take on, that I would like to add the wisdom of to my soul blueprint, right? Do I want to expand and enlarge based on this information, what I'm perceiving and understanding here? Or we also have the choice to say, interesting, perhaps even valid, but not something I'm interested in taking on, at least in this lifetime, perhaps, right? So that is really the free will portion. But what we don't understand is that when we encounter something, we think the yes or no of it occurs here. That, yes, I align with that. I will let that in. I accept that. Or no, that doesn't make sense. I'm unsure. That definitely is not something that I feel is true. And we push it away, right? But actually what's happening here, this process is actually supposed to be happening internally. The masculine energy is not supposed to be the thing that is the gatekeeper or the decider of what comes in and out of the combined field of the energy and the human vessel, right? The masculine energy is responsible for bringing that in to the feminine, so that the feminine perspective then takes a look at this, right? And from this placement, how do I understand it? What does it mean to me? What can we draw from this? Even if we choose to reject that thing, right? We can always learn something from that as well. So this communication needs to be happening inside the field rather than as a barrier or a gatekeeper energy, which actually creates a lot of resistance. So what's happening right now, we are feeling this system here where we resist, or where we think the decision needs to be made here in order to then bring it inside. It's like, well, that's how we make choices that are maybe not the best for us, right? Because what we know of, again, this is our atmospheric energy here, right? Our conditioning and our programming. So when we are making the choice out here, outside of our unified field, outside of that core of who we are, which is the merge of the soul and the human working together, right? When we are doing that, we are preventing an important process from taking place. This is why we feel this repression. It's why we feel this sense of maybe even implosion or pressure building, or I don't know what choice, I don't know where to go, I don't know what choice to make, I don't know what to do. This is why perhaps the mental confusion is at an all-time high, even if it's not being spoken about that way, and even if we're not quite seeing the play out of it, this is absolutely happening right now. People's minds are getting filled up because there's nowhere for this to go anymore. We are actually also moving from a, how did it come through today? Shoot, I forget the terms that it came in, but we're moving to this range where the mind is actually, it becomes an interpretive model now, rather than, again, that sense of the gatekeeper, right? Of like, the mind has the answer, so what I'm doing is bringing in information and saying, okay, mind, is this yes or no? Is this, you know, we take it on, we let it go, we change, whatever, we stay the same, right? The mind will no longer be able to operate as that control center. That's the foreign energy that's here. That's how we are kept in slavery, right? Instead, the energy field, the body, the heart allows this in. Why have we not allowed it in the past? This is when we can start to feel the chaos. And this is why it can feel like you're going back to that time of, let's say, the spiritual awakening, where suddenly something happens and suddenly we're searching because whatever I've been doing this whole time is not the answer anymore. I need something new, right? And then we start to open up to all this information and then have this experience of, am I crazy? What's going on? I've lived this long or this way this long so far. Like, now what does this mean about who I am and where I'm going, right? This identity crisis. So as we, I lost my train of thought as I went off on that tangent there. So the mind is now becoming an interpretive model, whereas before the mind was acting as the gatekeeper. Can't remember the exact words. Okay, but anyway, we could be experiencing this as an experience of repression. Because what's happening is that we are now running this in a different way inside of us, right? We're having to take this in. Okay, I'm getting a lot of this grief, right? This heart pain. Oh, this is what I was going to say about it. This concept of going from chaos to order, right? A lot of the reasons that we resist feeling emotions is because there's such a great sense of chaos associated with that. If I dive into this grief, if I dive into this anger, if I dive into this frustration, I don't know what will happen to me. I will feel out of control. And it's an unknown. Once I dive into it, I don't know what my experience will be, and therefore I have a fear around not knowing what will be on the other side of it. And yet, what is true, this is not what we are told in this world, right? But order always evolves out of chaos. It is not the other way around. There's this theory that everything is always evolving into chaos, but it's actually the other way. And so actually the best thing that we can do is to dive into this sense of chaos itself. And this is the piece as a human we have been so fearful and resistant of, right? The unknown, the emotions, the messiness of it all. But we know we always come up on the other side of it. And that is what essentially change is, right? Because what happens is we dive into it, and in order to come out of it, we either receive a new perspective, we must figure out a way to come to a new perspective, right? It is essentially a change agent, but this is evolution itself. And so where we have been unable, what I'm hearing actually is we have been disabled in order to not be able to dive into these emotional realms, and actually then having that emotional dive feel like complete disorder and destruction, almost this inevitable sense of, I'm going to fall off the face of the earth, right? I might just die here. This is too much. This is overwhelming. But our biology in many ways was disabled energetically to not be able to process this properly. So, yeah, I can feel that, yep, coming out of the left rib here. So it's all in this area. So what we are seeing is that our old way of trying to maintain stability, that's the other piece of this masculine energy, which is let me create a structure and a framework so that I know the boundaries. As long as I can hold on to this, I feel safe. And yet that is not, like, that is control though, right? Because then we are compartmentalizing and staying. Things cannot change, or I will feel unstable. Well, who actually wants to feel unstable, right? That's why we stay there. That's why we don't go into the emotions. Except actually, the way that we change and become more and more stable is knowing we can dive into this and we will always rise up on the other side of it. In fact, that is the brilliance of the energy field within the human body. You continue to evolve and expand, and the more that you have these experiences, you become greater and wider, more powerful, and more stable. So many people right now are being pushed into this process. And everyone will go through this. It's just right now. I have to laugh because I said this like a year ago, that when I saw it, I was like, oh boy. The people who are going to get hit the hardest with this year, from August to this upcoming August, are those who are aware of energy, right? Who do work with energy on a regular basis, whether it's energy work or just you're aware of it and you move it through your field, right? Consistently. And this is what's happening, right? We are relearning how to be in a human body now with a properly operating energy field without the effects of these foreign components. And it's weird, and we don't know how to do it because we've never had to do it in this body, right? So we are not above having to do this, even if we know energy. It's just, you are in a biological suit here, right? Which is having to adjust. You came in with mind control. You came in with control frameworks, structures, right? So these are all releasing. But this concept of masculine repressing, it's not actually that the masculine energy is repressing the feminine. It is that the masculine is repressed from being able to bring this in to the field in order to have the proper communication and exchange of information in order to realign itself. Right? So yesterday in the group, was it in the group session? I can't remember exactly, but it was coming through as that what we typically call masculine oppression of feminine energy, right? It's really the fact that the masculine cannot get to its feminine energy. So it almost came through as this distorted or repressed feminine component, and that's kind of what we're seeing. This thing seems to be within the sacral. It seems to be within the feminine range, and that's the energy I was saying where I felt like I got very distracted, right? This hits into the feminine sacral. It's an alien foreign energy. I really don't care like what it is anymore, right? It's just the fact that it's not supposed to be here. It's not original to the human design, right? Or the intended design. So what does it feel like when it activates? It feels like we're questioning ourselves. And it creates a sense of amnesia almost in the head, where we may start to feel the emotion and then we quickly get triggered and we shut it off, right? And then we move into what we might say is the mental processing. It's really not mental processing because it's happening in the lower ranges of the energy field, but the mind has gotten used to, see, the mind is taking cues from this, the base of the brain. It's the idea of control and structure, right? So some of the questions that start to happen when this activates then is, how is it coming through? Questioning yourself, right? What decision do I make? Do I really know what I'm doing? And then it goes into these expectations, like, if I make this choice, will I be fulfilling this role? Will I be satisfying these external things? Am I going to be safe in this reality? Or which decision or which way to go will bring me the most benefit in this external range, right? And it's really coming through the temples of the mind. And this has been happening over the last 2 days. When we find it, it constricts and it dries up the energy. So I do get this was established, probably not the Egypt we know through our human history, right? But through the temples. But that's almost that choking, right? Choking back, choking down, shutting down, right? Because this creates a sense of safety. But what actually is happening here? This is a threat to the control systems, right? Imagine if we all said what we truly feel. Imagine if we all actually knew what we were truly feeling. That's the other part of the problem, right? And this isn't like go and meditate and you'll find the answers. You know, meditation is very beneficial, but this isn't the only place this is happening now. This is almost it's unavoidable. It's inevitable. You will be experiencing it in real time now, not just when you go and sit in energy fields, right? So it's a massive correction that's coming through. And what I was actually getting, so we had this thing that's, I don't want to say it snuck in, right? But it came in undercover over the weekend. For me, I felt it Saturday. By Sunday, I was feeling the effect of the activation, like the good energy then that occurs as a result of this release, right? Of these, it's coming through almost as like compartmentalizations. Yeah, which that would be, right? Not being able to communicate and connect. We're keeping it separate. So this compartmentalization energy, which again really speaks to this idea of like we need to fully integrate and combine and let everything mix together, right? There's a fear of letting things mix and then I don't know who I am from it, right? That's also kind of inherent in this distortion. So this energy kind of came in undercover and hit this weekend. And what's happening is that those who are processing through this right now, those energy fields are what is going to cause a shift in the Earth's, it's in the energy field of the Earth, right? The Earth's atmosphere. That's not quite accurate, but it's the energy field of the Earth. And what I saw was that it's actually creating like a new I almost want to call it a bell curve, right? Because it's a spectrum almost. But it's raising the foundation that these lower ranges now will no longer exist. They will no longer be accessible. We're going to hold the memory of it and the way that we have operated in it in ourselves as long as we can tolerate, right? Until we kind of understand and process this through. But to me, it feels like there is a conscious range of beings here. And the elemental beings too also actually are really supporting this right now. But that as this integrates into these energy fields, it's like two months. Well, that would lead us up into Lionsgate, so potentially that it will be fully complete for these individuals, but that like halfway through that, so let's say a month out, it's really going to start to hit into the more unaware, I would say, maybe what we would call kind of collective of humanity in this way. So I really don't do kind of predictions, but it came through very strongly. Certainly this piece of raising the foundation, right? Raising the bar, raising this, it has to be here now. Because what I also felt as a result of this coming in, it's like this bit, almost like a crack, like the earth cracked in half, right? And I don't mean the actual physical earth is going to experience, like tectonic shifting or anything like that. Although certainly the earth is going through its own changes, right, as a result of everything that's occurring. But it's more that there is a shift in the energies. There is really, I was feeling this through the body too, like a realignment. Almost like the top half, like the torso of my body sitting on the bottom half, right? That there's an adjustment being made in that interfacing. Like how those two parts, how the one part maybe sits into the other, or how they connect. The fluidity, yeah. Which with they move, right? There's massive adjustments in this way. And really, that also speaks to this feeling of like, we feel so disconnected from our souls, right? Yes, there are moments where we really feel the presence of ourselves, right? We feel the presence of God. We feel the presence of Source. And it's easier and easier to tap into, but it still feels like it's not my constant human experience. It can be, right? But then we throw in all these other things that are happening in the world and we can get knocked out pretty quickly. So what it feels like is that now, because it is a merge, right? It is this merge of the soul or the energy field almost into the root in the sacral, where it's like the human and the soul are now always combined there, right? So we're having maybe to live from a different root base, maybe a different sacral base, which is totally going to change how we live in this reality. And because it's now inherent within us, it's like, well, this is what you need. You can't fight that anymore, right? Or you will feel like you're dying. And yet, of course, we're going to fight it for a time until we adjust to this. So it's really, really, really profound. What we think we are seeing is masculine regression, maybe even masculine oppression of the feminine, but it's really masculine repression. And what we mean by that is that all of this has been held outside of the combined field and hasn't been able to interface and communicate properly. The other thing that was coming through that I really want to touch on is this idea of masculine energy, and how it seems to me that we have also created some kind of collective story around masculine's inability to get in touch with its emotions, right? To be able to process its experience properly. And I find that concept, I know there are biological differences. And also I feel like this greater concept is based it's a result of mind control, but we do see where, yes, the masculine is unable to process here, right? But that's in all of our masculine ranges. So where we, being in more of a feminine energy, or a female body, I'm not quite sure if that's even fair to say anymore. Maybe we're more aware. We've had more permission to be emotional, to have the emotional exchanges. The emotional exchanges were considered natural, which by default of being able to birth and create, yes. Like, interesting. It's like the feminine energy was granted permission to do this energy exchange, and the masculine energy was not. It's also giving me this image of how the masculine, it's like donates its sperm to the creation of life, but isn't involved in the creation of life. These same themes in so many different ways. It's the same theme in so many different analogies here. So many different images that are being presented. And really, that heartbreak as a result of that, not being able to be a part of this co-creation process, because that's really what's happening when we are allowing the masculine and feminine perspectives to work together, right? It's co-creation. We're creating something new, we're evolving. Even if we, like I said, we don't take in that information, we still process it. In the processing of it, something new develops as a result of it, right? A deeper understanding of something, a different perspective, or even just a deeper awareness, right, of the thing that we're saying, yeah, not really. We tend to talk about the flow state as being a very feminine thing. It's actually not a feminine thing. The flow is actually happening in the masculine range. That flow needs to be brought internally, and it needs to communicate here. It needs to exchange in order to shift the core of the field, the core of your understanding, the core of your identity, right? So a lot of us may be experiencing a bit of an identity crisis right now too, right? This ego and this resistance and this aggression and repression and oppression is all a part of what is going on, so it's a good thing. We're seeing the effects of this, but by far this feels like the hardest and the heaviest to move through right now. It feels so personal, it feels so internal, it feels such a part of the body, but that's what's happening, right? The body is finally being able to engage. How do we say it? It's like the not necessarily, again, that the locks have been taken off, right? But that maybe it is, where we have not been able to fully process through that experience, because we have often come close, right? We've come close, we've had the feeling, we've processed through a lot of stuff too, maybe, of emotions, but then also like, okay, do I have to keep, like, this thing keeps coming up, it's looping and recycling and whatever, right? Not being able to sort it out, to change and shift something and then move on, right, to something new. So I think that's all that I want to bring into the consciousness here today. There's still this piece that I can't remember when I said the mind is moving into this interpretive model. Obviously, where we're at now, or where we're moving from, is, the mind is kind of the deciding factor, or the one that gets to make the decision about the thing, right? It's like, okay, let's have the feeling or the experience, or let's go into meditation, let's bring something new up, and then ultimately it's like, mind, yes or no, mind, where do we, right? It's not going to be like that any longer. It's going to be more body-based, more heart-based, more soul and human combined. And I don't know exactly how this is going to be experienced, right? But it's less perhaps even feeling like we're making a decision, and more that we're following this flow. And really the way it's coming through now is when I talked about kind of that family of origin atmosphere, right? That conditioning that we get molded into, now we're creating our own atmosphere, right? As a result of this all being able to co-combine, co-create here. That's really the energy that we're following, right? It's almost like following a trail or following a scent. We are creating our own scent now that we get to follow. And that's how we know it's right. That's how we know it's a yes or no. Not this other way of this is the structure, I have to fit it through here and find how it fits. And the mind is almost the last, because it will come to the conclusion then of, okay, so that was the right way to go. Look at what this brought me. It's going to build, yeah, it's an interpretive model, whatever that means, right? We'll learn, obviously, as we go along. So, all right. This is where I'm going to leave you here today. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Please remember to be gentle with yourself. This is life-changing, life-changing.